Welcome, everyone, to this month's edition of Cabaret Conversations from the 92nd Street Y School of Music. As always, I am your host, Michael Kirk Lane. I'm thrilled to have you all join us for a very special edition of Cabaret Conversations. When I got the yes from this guest that they would join the series, I was completely over the moon. She, of course, has been seen on television shows such as Monarch, Melissa and Joey, Drop Dead Diva, Spin City, Modern Family, Grey's Anatomy, just to name a few. Her concert and cabaret performance have taken her all over the world, performing at the Sydney Opera House with the Boston Pops and many philharmonics and pops around the country and the world. She, of course, is a Broadway icon. She's been seen on Broadway in Annie, The Little Mermaid, Little Me, The Dead, Noises Off, Disaster. She was Tony nominated for Jerome Robbins' Broadway, Bells Are Ringing, and A Catered Affair, and of course, won the Tony for her legendary performance as Miss Adelaide in Guys and Dolls. Please welcome to Cabaret Conversations, Faith Prince. Hello, Faith. Welcome to Cabaret Conversations.
We made it.
We made it. Technology has been our friend today. Fingers crossed the gremlins stay away from us. It is such an honor to have you as part of this series.
Thank you for having me. I'm so glad you asked. I love the 92nd Street Y.
I love the why they're so supportive of this series and of the art form of cabaret. And I'm so lucky that we have found a home for cabaret conversations through the 92nd Street Y.
Just look, it's divine what you've done.
Everything at the Y, all of the programming is so special, and the fact that they are willing to shine a light on such is which a lot of people think is a niche art form, and to let the stories be recorded and to be told is amazing. And it's such an honor that we are now getting to record your take on the art form and your stories as part of it. I always like to start, towards the beginning. They say it's a very good place to start. So how did somewhere, I think somebody said it, the little musical theater girl from Lynchburg end up in the big city? I know there's a stop at CCM. Who were those early mentors who encouraged you to make this your life?
And it's funny, I don't remember her name. My first grade teacher, it left me, but she put me, she said, do you want to be in the talent show in first grade? And I was like, oh, that sounds like fun. And so she had a poem about a Raggedy Ann doll. And I went home and told my mother I was going to be in the talent show. My mother was like, really? What are you going to do? I could tell my mother was nervous, And I said, I'm going to read this poem about a Raggedy Ann doll. It was my mother who was really the star because she made my costume, and she had these white tights, and she took little strips of red and safety pinned it in the back. And then she took an old pair of tennis shoes, and she cut a hole in it and put sawdust in it. And so at the end of the poem, I kind of shook my foot. I think that's what got me the prize. I got like first runner up or something, but it was kindergarten through kindergarten through 7th grade. So,
oh, wow. Okay.
So it was pretty good. And I just remember being on stage and going, oh, this feels so good. I felt comfortable. And then I didn't do anything till probably I was in 5th grade, and I did the Lynchburg Fine Arts Center, and I went with a friend to support her for King and I. It was one of the children, and they said, don't you want to audition? I said, oh no, I didn't really bring anything. I'm just here for Carol Camo. I'm just supporting her. And they said, well, just do something. I mean, you're here, why not? And I really didn't have a song, so I sang Happy Birthday, but I did it with a lot of feeling, Michael. A lot of feelings into it. I was already kind of authentic. And of course, I got the role, and Carol Camo didn't speak to me for 2 weeks. So.
Ooh, those childhood rivalries.
I'm telling you. So that was sort of the beginning. And then we had a great program at my high school, EC Glass. And I knew kind of leading up to that, I really wanted to be a part of the shows. It was a big deal in town. The auditorium held like 3,000 people, and people really supported the shows. I think Oliver had been Music Man, had been there
Mhm.
before I got there. And then when I went into my junior year, it was Oklahoma, and I got Laurie, not Ada Wanny, at Laurie in Oklahoma. And then they did South Pacific for me to do Nellie Forbush.
Mm. I'm
And
sure
then,
even then your Nellie Forbush was something.
well, I loved her. I really did.
Mhm.
I related to her. And I remember being in my living room going, now, if I really said this, if this were just me, if this dialogue just fell out of my mouth, what would it sound like? And that's the way I kind of started.
Mm. What a great
And
instinct from the beginning.
yeah, I kind of did. I mean, I kind of was doing, all the greats teachers, things that they would say just instinctively. And then of
Mhm.
course I learned from so many great people and great teachers. But Carl Harris was the head of the chorus, and he said, you know what, I really think you should maybe go for this. I was going to go into music therapy because I worked in the summers with Down syndrome children, and I led the music program, and I could play the piano. And I really was going to go for that. And he said, I don't say this often, but I really think you should maybe look at doing like a career. And he said, I hear this is great school, Cincinnati Conservatory of Music. And so the weekend I was supposed to audition, I got laryngitis. And so he sent a reel to reel. That's how, dark ages of my performance in South Pacific. And they took me into the school based on that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Uh, It's amazing that we just had another CCM grad who's made their way onto this show, who's also in the world of cabaret, but also a Broadway legend. Mr. Ken Page was just on the show.
Loving me some Ken
Mm.
Page.
Tell me about your experience at CCM. Who were the mentors there?
Well, it's funny. My biggest one is Worth Gardner, who we are on the phone 2, if not 3 times a month with each other. He lives near San Francisco, and I live in Northern California too, Sacramento. And he and I call each other at night. We talk about things. I've done readings with him, over the plays over the phone, and I mean, not over the phone, over the internet. And I still am very close to him, and we talk a lot. So he really had an influence. And there was Oscar Kasarin and Earl Rivers, who did the singers there. He gave me my first kind of comedy number. And
What was it?
it was actually a jingles medley that was, me da 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 in the USA. And then I did 2 all beef patty, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun. And Jimmy Walton wrote it. And so he started giving me sort of comedy numbers. And then Worth, but I was a turtle. I wasn't, the tortoise and the hare. I was
Hmm.
definitely slow and steady. And it took me time to sort of marinate and sort of, that's why I tell a lot of my students, not everything happens at once.
Yeah,
What I was at 17 and what I was at 27 was quite different. But I really worked hard and steady, and I was a good student. I mean, I really listened, took notes, took things to heart, and I always say, it's great to know yourself, but don't push against your teachers so much that you're not able to really take
mhm,
in what they're telling you.
definitely.
Um, Cincinnati changed my life. I mean, it was really life changing.
Did you move directly from the program to the city?
I did, with one stop to Washington, D.C. I was doing summer stock at Wagon Wheel Playhouse, which
Mhm.
which was a big hub for a lot of the schools like Northwestern, Atlantic University, Catholic University. Um, Trying to think of where the other students from, but a lot of us for Cincinnati, Florida State. I think they had some students, and they would, I mean, it's still there. They still
Yeah.
audition students, all around the country, and it was non-equity. It was a great first job, you know, and I did 3 summers there. So I got a lot, and I think you learn by doing. You
Yes.
really, we were doing like 6 and 7 shows a summer, and, you were rehearsing one while you were putting on the other. It was
Mhm.
like the Melody Top. I don't know
Mm.
if you ever went to Melody Top, but Wagon Wheel, there were these tents around the country,
Yeah.
and Music Circus, it's still here. It's not a tent anymore, but I did Music Circus. That's where I met my husband in 87. But
Oh, wow. So once you made the stop in DC and doing Wagon Wheel, what was
and
the
the
impetus
woman
for?
who was the choreographer at Wagon Wheel, Diane Hamilton, I'll
Mhm.
never forget. She said, "You might want to come and audition for this job that I'm doing at this hotel. It's a review, and it has 3 women, 2 men." And she said, "I think you might really be right for it, and you could get your equity card." Now, it's a little more complicated nowadays for kids right out of
Mhm.
school. Sometimes they don't want their
Their
equity
card
card.
initially, yeah.
But boy, did I want it, because I did not want to go in that city and not be able to, put my card down and go into that audition. So my mom met me. She flew out to Warsaw, Indiana, met me. We drove all night. I auditioned the next day and did not get the job, and was packing up my things to go. And the other girl, it was for the middle soprano, the second soprano. It was a soprano, second soprano, alto comedy girl.
Mhm.
And Angie Rayo, who I'm huge fans and friends with now, she was doing the review, and she fell out, and they called me up and they said, "Don't go anywhere. We're going to hire you for the comedy alto girl." And so I stayed, got my equity card, and then I went to New York.
Mm. What were the first years in New York like?
A little culture shock. I was as my teacher at Cincinnati, Beverly Rinaldi, she told me years later, she said, "Honestly, I cannot believe you made it in this business." Not because she didn't think I was talented. I was just so green and sort of tenuous, and boy, am I not that now. Nobody would ever say Faith Prince and tenuous in the same sentence. But I was, and my mother still talks about, I get to a yellow light and I go, "Should I go? Should I go? Should we go now?" And boy, I mean, I hate to say it, but I got me some balls, Michael.
Mhm.
And you did that by living in New York. So but it took me 10 years to get my first Broadway show. I'm sort of the joke of Playbill Cruises, because everybody always tells, how when they got their first Broadway show and everything. Like Terrence Mann, came up from North Carolina and just sort of landed it, and Charlotte D'Amboise just, went from dance class into Jerome Robbins. And it took me 10 years, but hey, I'm the turtle. Remember the
Yeah.
tortoise with the hare? I'm slow and steady. So I just say, hang in there, keep
Mhm.
going. Uh, you get there.
And I
Some
mean, a Tony nomination right out of the gate
I did.
for your
Yeah,
first Broadway show ain't bad.
no, it isn't. So sometimes, you get there how you get there. There's a million ways in. And I always
Mhm.
tell people that.
And that, your journey and your path is what's right for you, and it's going to happen in the order it's supposed to happen for you.
Exactly. I always say, stay in your own lane.
Mhm.
Know that there are other cars in the lane. Yes, it's competitive, but really all you have to do is cross your finish line. Have a higher power, a power higher than yourself. Make sure the landscape is open for your higher power to step in. Be intuitive, listen, listen for the signs. Signs come from everywhere. And this is what I teach too. But I definitely believed that. And
Did you have that always with you?
I did. I kind of always lived, that book, The Secret, the movie,
Mhm.
The Secret. Yes, I always imagined things and walked towards them. And still to this day, I'm quite intuitive, and I have things just kind of wash over me. And, so I'm really listening, and keeps me very present.
Mm. I think that seems like it would also keep the rejection and the disappointment. You can handle it more if that's your perspective.
Well, I developed a technique, and I tell my students to do this too. I teach now a lot, which is my favorite thing I've ever done. And I never imagined that I would be that, but I was a good babysitter. I was a good camp counselor. I mean, it kind of, again, there was the landscape for all of it, but I didn't realize it. And I was in group therapy for 10 years. So a lot of times you did crosstalk in the group therapy, and I was careful, like how I said things, and a lot of that dialogue and keeping the focus on yourself as you're saying something. I've noticed, this is me, this is where I'm coming from. It served me well in one-on-one,
Mm.
so all those things stacked together. I really think probably I became an entertainer to become a teacher.
Wow. That's profound.
And then I found my purpose, because I always had this thing tapping me on my shoulder. And I told my girlfriend one day, I said, this isn't it for me. She goes, what do you mean? You're living in Hastings. You do Broadway show after Broadway show. You've got your child, your husband. I said, oh, I know. I'm so grateful, so happy, but it's telling me this is not it.
Mm.
And then the latter part of my life, I got a chance to teach, and I've really grown into that. And the tapping went away.
Mm. What was the first door that opened for you for your teaching?
Irv Rabel ran a cabaret program at Yale
Uh-huh.
during the summer. And I think Amanda McBroom, thankfully, fell out that summer. I mean, I love Amanda McBroom.
Yeah, of course.
And Alex Ryback said, why don't you get Faith Prince? And I went, Faith Prince? Faith Prince doesn't teach. And he said, oh, you'll be great. And I was just like, oh my God, I don't even know what I'd say. Well, they couldn't shut me up. I mean, I loved it. I loved sharing. I got so excited about the students. I had all these ideas. These things just kept flowing through, my head. And it was the best time I ever had. And that was the beginning.
Do you find that teaching has changed you as a performer?
Yes. A lot of times when I get into places and I go, oh, this isn't going to be easy. And I go, note to self, remember this will be good information. So sometimes the point of view, I kind of just go to the sort of the top of the mountain, and I go, okay, now remember this, sort of document it. Just kind of pulls me right out, and I'm sort of observing it. So it's really helped in a lot of ways.
In those early years, after Drum Robbins, moving into Guys and Dolls, you weren't doing your own solo acts yet, but were you out seeing solo acts?
I occasionally, but not really all that much. I had a couple people sort of say to me, you should do your own show. And I was like, I don't really think I have much to say. Now, if I'd had me as a teacher, I would have said everybody always has something to say at every age.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know that then. So it was 1999. So I was about 42, maybe something like that. And Wiley Housam was doing a series at Joe's Pub. And he suggested to me that I put something together, and I said, I don't know. I like being other people. I really, it's great for me to serve. I don't know, being myself. And he said, I really think this would be your wheelhouse. You've got to trust me on this. And I went, okay, I'll try it. So he put a team together with me. I mean, Stuart Ross had been a friend who had created Forever Plaid. And he had always been after me to do something. And then I chose Daisy Prince. So Stuart was going to help write it. And Daisy Prince, I had met actually at Spin City, because her husband, Sandy, as she called him then, I don't know if he goes by Alexander, but Sandy was in Spin City. And we used to sit in the green room and just kind of chat and everything. I really liked her. And she was first of all, a woman and very strong. And so I got her to direct it. And then Wiley chose Alex Rybeck, who had done a lot of Cabaret.
Yep.
So he was, oh, I mean, honestly, I always say everything I know about Cabaret, Alex Rybeck taught me.
Mhm.
He was a wonderful teacher. And so I think Stewart had this idea of in his mind sort of doing a female version of Forever Plaid, because he turned me on to all the 50s stuff. And I mean, literally, I bought like 500 CDs. I didn't even own like 10. And I was attracted to a lot of the 50s. I mean, that Blossom Dearie and
Mhm.
all these things. But Alex pulled me aside one day and he said, this is really supposed to be about you. And I was like, huh, okay, say more. He said, well, just let's go back. And he just sat with me. And so between the three of us, it was a great threesome because
Mhm.
everybody was kind of coming from a slightly different point of view. And we developed it. First, it was going to be called like Broadway Cocktail. And then it became Leap of Faith.
Mhm. Which is
And
your album.
it is. And the first time I walked out there, I mean, I think Jeff Harner was in the audience.
Mhm.
Maybe even Liz Calloway. Oh God, so many, people from the cabaret world. And I went, what the hell am I doing? I think Leah Delaria was in the audience.
Mm.
Um, and I put up 10 numbers. And I just thought, I have no idea what I said to my husband backstage, why didn't you tell me to, not do this? He goes,
Mm.
oh, you got this. You got this. So I think we took out 4 numbers and replaced them with other things. And we just started to build from there. But it was a really, I mean, it was like I walked into some other land. It's that moment in Wizard of Oz when everything becomes in color.
Mhm.
And I thought, oh my God, I have waited my whole life because I'm definitely from a family of storytellers.
Mm.
Everything I do, I relate my day with a story. I used to have a neighbor in Hastings and he'd go, tell me something I don't know. We'd start with the day's story of something that had happened. I mean, I always have been a storyteller. And I didn't realize that's what it was.
Was that the biggest aha moment for you in the transition from being a Tony-winning Broadway actress into the world of cabaret?
Yes. It was an aha moment. And I think that's why I've been so dedicated to being I mean, most of my students, I direct their acts,
Mhm.
and the storytelling from their point of view, just even them looking at their lives in terms of a story and using music through that has changed. So I mean, I wish CBS Sunday Morning would do a special and come into my world and see how
Mhm.
people are transformed by cabaret, both as an art, but in terms of just their day-to-day life.
Yeah.
It gives people such confidence. And like them, when I walked out of there, I thought, wow, I just felt so in charge of myself. And it wasn't ego as much, it was the confidence was coming from being vulnerable and sharing, like taking off the mask
Mhm.
and really sharing your vulnerability. And I mean, there were things that came up and I talked about. I still to this day, I was like, wow, didn't think of that. Just about being Southern, people thinking I was a Jewish girl from New York. I'm a Southern Presbyterian, proud to be from the South, but glad I got out. I mean, the fact that my family moved 9 times in the same town when I was growing up. Just, there was insight into the complexity of my life.
Mhm.
And it was just truly a magical time for me. And so I've dedicated myself to giving that to other people. And it's been so enlightening for them, but for me.
Mhm. What is the biggest lesson you try to impart to your students when you're working in the art form of cabaret?
You're enough. You don't have to put a hat on a hat, as Jen Simard says. You don't have to be more than you are. Finding that space where you speak from your truth. And I mean, I could literally tell you 20 stories. I mean, I've had psychiatrists, I've had dentists, I've had lawyers, I mean, these are people who are well renowned in other things, and this has been their expression, and they've always wanted to do it. Some of them went into the entertainment industry early. They could sing, some of them don't have the greatest voices, but it doesn't, I mean, Jimmy Durante didn't have a great voice, but he was a great storyteller, and he was a vaudevillian, and I love the art form.
We were talking before we had an audience with, I feel that way, and I've said this to him. Sidney Meyer is such a great storyteller and a vaudevillian, like you say, but is not a classically gorgeous voice.
No.
But I would watch him read the phone book.
Yeah, Julie Wilson, in her later years didn't really sing. Who cares? She was embodying, it kind of moved through her. And I mean, I just thought she was riveting. Again, I'd watch her read the encyclopedia, it's just like, what's next? I'm here. She just was so present and so amazing, and there're just so many greats. Karen Mason was one of the first cabaret acts I ever saw at the Duplex. And when she stopped, somebody said something to her in the audience, and she was like, oh, yeah, we'll talk about that later. And she just like responded, and I just went, oh, I want to be that. That's what I want to do.
It's that interesting thing that happens in cabaret, where because of the intimacy of it, the audience does become your scene partner.
Yes. And as an actress, it was the thing I was always most connected to. And that's why I like doing 8 shows a week, because I would literally land the first whatever I came out to start with, and I could read the audience like that. And I thought, okay, it's gonna be a longer journey tonight, but I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna go around the long way. It's all right. I'll hang with you. And I never got upset about that. Nathan and I used to talk about that, because he'd get pissed off. He was like, nah, not quick enough. And I went, it's okay. Just keep looking at me. I said, we're going to get him. We're going to go around the long way. So I was always reading the room. It's probably my, being.
Well, it's that intuitiveness that you were talking about earlier that you've always had.
I was, the child of an alcoholic. I mean, it gives you many benefits that you don't realize you get. You can read a room so quick.
Well, you mentioned Nathan, and although he's not in this clip, I think before we move into the clips of you in cabaret, my mother would kill me if I had you on the show and didn't show a Guys and Dolls clip. So I have a clip from, I think it's the opening night B-roll from Guys and Dolls. I will say that cast album was one of the first CDs I bought.
Wow.
Listened to it constantly, all throughout high school. Listening to you were a big influence, so that's why it's such an honor to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, and I was proud to be on it and proud to be a part of it. It's one of the most for so many reasons. I mean, just the work that went into the piece, and the cast, and that particular version of Guys and Dolls, and it moved fast, and it was not dated, and it was truly one of the best moments in my life.
Back in the cabaret world, as you're working with students, do you find, and it's something you spoke on a little bit a moment ago, do you find it difficult sometimes to take a musical theater performer and then bring them into this world where they don't have a character to hide behind, though there isn't that fourth wall?
I think there are all sorts of kinds of performers, and I think sometimes it's not as easy if somebody's not naturally a storyteller, but they're a great actor. It is a different world, but I think my job as a director and helping them build an act is to find the things that they do well. And sometimes, I mean, even in my own act, I cross over and do characters within the act. Now, I did find, I call it a persona, but your persona has to be authentic. Yes. And so it's sort of like driving with the accelerator and the brake a little bit. And some people don't have a natural ability, but I can work with them. And, they think they have to put on everything, it's like, and here I am, and welcome, and it's like, no, welcome. So happy you're here. I always tell them I act as if I already know the audience. Like, did I mention this? Oh, the funniest thing happened, and I just sort of treat it. So I've given them sort of techniques, and I get them to tape themselves and listen to how to do that, finding that voice. And a lot of times, like one woman that I worked with was an actress, then became a therapist, and then came back to it. And she sort of got into her story, and she goes, and then my mother, blah, blah. And I said, just, you're just enough. All you have to say, yeah. So it was rough, I was doing the dishes at 5 thinking, this is not my job. You're enough.
As a performer yourself, how does your approach differ in approaching a new club act versus approaching a new role?
Not unsimilar, honestly. I look for a few things. I look for a beginning, middle, and an end. I look for an arc, which I do in my roles. I look for an arc in the piece. I look for an arc in a club act. My favorite thing, and I always say it'll be fun to see what is revealed. The act itself reveals itself.
Yes.
And when you start out, you don't know where it's coming from. But I say to the students, let's pick some things you're attracted to. Some songs that you're attracted to, some stories that you're attracted to. And usually the songs lead to the stories. Sometimes the stories lead to a specific song. It can come from, different ways. But I always say, it's going to be fun to see what this becomes, because it's never, it's kind of like having your colors done and thinking you're in autumn and you're really a late spring. It reveals itself. And that's why I love the work so much. And people people start really showing things that are deep, but we're not dumping. I said, we're not
Yeah.
here. This is not therapy. It's not. And I said, and I will always keep you from being that. I will protect you from you, just like people protect me from me. We all do it. And sometimes it goes too far. We don't need to tell that much, or we leave it open and it just lays there and they get it. I often say I do 2 numbers that are about my brother who passed away actually during Guys and Dolls. Wish You Were Here and Autumn. I never say one thing about him.
Mhm.
I just start the number. But it's a great way to go there.
It
And
is that line of, since we have such a focus on the lyric in this art form, letting the lyric do as much of the work for you as possible.
That's right. And people don't realize how to chew those words. People throw away, I typically, that's a thing I see most often. People throw away their words. I grab onto, what are we going to grab onto in this sentence? The lyrics are everything for me. The music is actually a symptom of the lyrics for me. And usually when people go, I picked this song because I love that tune. And I'm thinking, it's great you love the tune. Now I need you to do it as a monologue because I need to know how you feel about it. What's your point of view of this? And it's the same way I work with musical theater students. So in a way, your question, it's all related to me. It's sort of like working in television and theater. It's still the same amount of energy, but it's funneled differently. It's like you have a funnel and people go, oh, well, you just have to be, like, because the camera's right there and you do. No, you can be as excited. You can be as impassioned. Your character, what does your character want? What does your character need? What are you trying to get across? What are you trying to share? But if 50 people are sitting this close to me, I don't have to go, hey, do you know what I mean? I don't have to do it for the back seats and the mezzanine, I can go, hey, do you know what I mean? Got it? So it really, it's the funnel that's different. It's the same amount of energy. It's just funneled into a different kind of space. And that's what I like about it, because there really no stones unturned. When people are right up on you, there's just no hiding. Just like when a camera's on you, it sees everything, And in the theater, I mean, you open up. I mean, Adam Arkin said to me one time, okay, so he went on as Nathan for 6 weeks. He goes, when I'm in the audience watching you, it looks like you're looking at me. And when I'm on stage looking at you, it looks like you're looking at me. So which is it? And I went, both. So it does take slightly different techniques, but it's the same amount of energy.
In that funneling it differently or same energy, is it a different technique? Is working with a symphony orchestra or Boston Pops, do you differ your performance from the cabaret setting? Because sometimes you're doing the same material.
I pretend like it's my living room. I mean, honestly, Carnegie Hall and Sydney Opera House are very similar because there's something about that space that I feel like I'm in my living room, even though it's a huge, cavernous, high pressured situation. I mean, when you're, starring at the Sydney Opera House or you're at Carnegie Hall, you think, oh God, I'm going to walk out there and it's going to be, and it's the way they've built it and sort of designed it. It's genius because it's like, I'm so glad you're here. I can't explain it. I don't know. It's the way they put the stage. It's sort of served into the audience.
The reason I ask is that I'm going to show another clip. And this clip, when I was watching it, it's with the Boston Pops. And I was watching the specificity in your performance and thought to myself, no, she's performing the same as if this was a 50-seat cabaret room. And the way you're doing that is causing that huge auditorium to lean into you.
That's right. Because if you make them come to you, it's like when you raise your eyebrow or you stop to say something, it can be small, but they'll see it.
Mm-hmm. Well, here is you from a Jerry Herman tribute at the Boston Pops doing So Long, Dearie.
Goodbye, 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 goodbye. Don't try to stop me, Horace, wave your little hand and whisper so long, dearie. You ain't gonna see me anymore. But when you discover that your life is dreary, don't you come a-knocking at my door. For I'll be all dolled up and singing that song that says, you dog, I told you so. So wave your little hand and whisper so long, dearie, dearie. Should have said so long ago. Because you treated me so rotten and rough, I had enough of feeling low. So wave your little hand and whisper so long, dearie, dearie. Should have said so long ago. For I can hear that choo-choo calling me on to a fancy new address. Yes, I can hear that choo-choo calling me on board that Happiness Express. I'm gonna learn to dance and drink and smoke a cigarette. I'm going as far away from Yonkers as a girl can get. And on those cold winter nights, Horace, you can snuggle up to your cash register. It's a little lumpy, but it rings. Don't come a-knocking, I'll be all dolled up and singing that song that says, you dog, I told you so. So, Horace, you will find your life a sad old story when you see your dolly shuffle off to glory. Oh, I should have said so long ago.
Fun.
When you're putting a new show together, do you still bring in a director?
Always. Always. I work a lot with Dan Foster, who's married to Liz Calloway. I use my friend Karen Carney, who's from Northwestern, who went into, selling phones. But she was a producer and a great actress herself. And so sometimes she'll direct my act.
Mm-hmm.
I always have an eye. I think you always need it.
I agree. You need that outside eye.
Yeah. And even, Alex, who's so much more than even, being a pianist and doing the arrangements and stuff, he's still in it. We're both in it. So you need somebody, giving
he can't see standing, being right over here. He can't see what's reading from the front.
Exactly. Cheryl Stern has helped me do, writing for some of my material. Stuart Ross, I said, once I got the hang of how it went,
mm-hmm.
then I start to have ideas because, I'm a person that once I learn something, I can usually turn around and go help somebody else. I mean, that's just my dad was sort of like that. He was a nuclear engineer, and my mother used to say the thing he was greatest at was sort of breaking it down for anybody, understand physics. And I think I am like my dad that way, because once I got the hang of it, I really wanted to share it with someone. Oh, it's like, oh, this is, we got this, and again, it's just been so great to help somebody else tell their story. I think that's been the most enjoyable thing for me, and I still love performing. Don't get me wrong. I mean, if it's the right project, I know what I'm sort of getting into, and I'll go 120%. I mean, I kind of wear directors out sometime in a good way. I mean, I come to the table with a lot, but I also listen and I take direction very well. But I come extremely prepared, and have a lot of thoughts, but I love the collaboration, either in a piece or a TV show or a movie or anything like that. I want to hear, like, okay, what's happening here? How do I sort of, this is what I'm thinking. What are you thinking? I love the collaboration of it.
Well, and it seems like you've always been that way. I heard you tell a story once about having to have a moment with Jerome Robbins, questioning the comedic timing of a moment during rehearsals.
Yeah. He, we had a thing at, I think it was Sardi's. We taped this, was sort of around the table sort of conversation at a lunch. It was Robert LaFosse, me, Charlotte D'Amboise, Marianne Lamb, I think it was Grover Dale, talking about him. I have such great respect for him, and I learned so much, a lot, by watching him with other people. I learned what would tick him off, or, it was all about concentration, and he was looking to tell that story, and he was talking about specificity. I mean, he didn't make one move that it was not in the storytelling. And the focus was always where he needed it to be. Nobody moved a pinky, that it wasn't focused on. And I learned so much from him. And we were in rehearsal for 6 months, which was part of the issue the day that
that's a long time.
It is, because as a comedian, I'm always, sometimes I figure things out in front of an audience. That's when I do a lot of my work. And this particular, he loved running gimmick at the end of the day because it made him feel good. But he was honestly one of the most insecure people I've ever been around. And I think just because he questioned himself, and that's why he was a great artist. He just, and this was a big deal, and he hadn't done anything in a long time, and he was pulling up all these books and the blocking, and it was a huge project. And I got all that. But I'm the kind of person, it's like, well, now you can trust me, I'm gonna fly, and he still wanted it just like he wanted it. I mean, it was, but I kept thinking, I can't imagine that Judy Holliday or Ethel Merman took everything and didn't take it to the next level for themselves. So he was a lot older then, and I think a lot more controlling, quite frankly. And believe me, I mean, I'm like, yeah, come on, Jerry, not like that. I wasn't like that. I mean, my name's Faith, I'm very respectful, but I am a strong person in myself. And I think you have to be both. I think you have to be respectful and be good to be directed, but I think you have to know yourself too. And it was just, one day, and I took a pause, and I was thinking that'll get a big laugh, just in my, just my own sense of humor. And he started snapping those fingers, and I was just like, what? I mean, I just snapped, and I was like, I just broke. And I was like, what? He goes, no, pause. And I go, yes, pause. It's funny. It's funny, but you wouldn't know that because we've been rehearsing with no audience for 5 months. I mean, I just snapped. And then I said, sir. But I mean, he didn't fire me.
The question is, did you get to keep the pause?
I did. He came to me at Pace University before we did our run through, and he goes, Faith? And I said, yes, sir. And he goes, take the pause. I said, thank you. It's going to work. So, and I had a very difficult father. He was extremely talented, extremely charming, extremely alcoholic. He was complex, but it really prepared me for the landscape for a lot of difficult people. And I think once I got through that in my childhood, I just thought I'm always going to know myself and really be there for myself, and I have to say, he came to me at the party that night. Debbie Gravide had a party, and he goes, the next time, we have a row, could we talk about it? I've just been upset all day. Jerome Robbins said that to me. I said, oh my God, of course. Of course. And, I always felt he just really dug me. I mean, it was almost like I pushed back in a way. He kind of dug it, which is bizarre, but I hadn't done it to do that. It's just like, I needed some space to be funny, have my own sense of humor and just kind of get into it. I wanted to fly.
Well, the pause worked because you got a Tony nomination for it.
Well, there you go.
As you're taking your cabaret shows, because you are someone who does them both in the city, but then takes them around the country and around the world. Do you find a difference in New York cabaret audiences versus cabaret audiences in other cities?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. People have different, I mean, there's funny is funny, but there's sophistication. New Yorkers are ahead of you, so you really better be quick. They've seen it. It's like I said to my friend Jason Gra, who he and I do a show. It was called Prince and the Showboy, and now it's called You and Me and Mostly Me. And I love performing with him. It's one of my favorite things because he's one of my best friends, and it's a great way to just sort of connect every once in a while and do our show. But I said to him, we're doing this Jerry Herman tribute. I said, New Yorkers, they know Jerry Herman. It's like, we're not telling them. If we were going to maybe Salt Lake City, or we were going to, somewhere in Idaho, we'd be sort of telling them about Jerry Herman. New Yorkers know Jerry Herman. So we've got to be more specific. I mean, how did he affect us? We worked with him. What did he say to us? I mean, I've just been dreaming about this all night. And I said, and I'm thinking like a lot of his songs went together. It was like a cacophony of positivity. And so I really started to like have dreams about all these things. And so we did an opening number that kind of, poor Jason, he had to learn most of the parts. And I just sang basically Haul Out the Holly and then So Long Dear, Christmas into So Long Dear, maybe a little, no, it wasn't So Long Dear. It was Before the Parade Passes By. He had to fill in with all the Grand Hotel, and he did most of the work. Sorry. But it was, and Alex wrote it, and it was a cacophony, and it was basically, it all went together. All his positive songs, But then I thought, what did he mean to me? I mean, he meant to me as a woman. He wrote great roles for women. He wrote great roles for men who played women. And they were mother-like roles. I noted that. They weren't mother roles. They were mother-like. And his mother was his biggest muse. So taking something like that, really getting specific. And I said to Jason, I said, I want more, because, I am what I am. What, you never really talk about you. I said, you were a great son. You were a mama's boy. You loved your mother. Your mother was a showgirl. This is more than just, he wrote a song, for the iconic 80s. It's like, I want to know about Jason. And he got kind of mad at me, but then he told the story about his mother when he came out and was gay. And it was hilarious and heartbreaking at the same time. And I go, now we're rolling. Now these New Yorkers, we're going to be ahead of them. They're going to get the specificity, because New York, they go to shows all the time. They are experts at cabaret. They are experts at songbook. They want to see what slant you have. What are you going to put on it? What is your point of view? They want that. So anytime I do a show, honey, I do it every place but New York. And then I'm ready to come in. So yes, it does have a difference. And sometimes I would do the lament, I do the lament, a jazz version of the lament. And sometimes I would do just the lament straight, because they weren't going to get how savvy and special it was. New Yorkers would.
Mm-hmm.
Londoners would. So yes, I think you have to take in your audience. And usually my show changes slightly because of where I'm at. What do I want to say to these people? What do I want to end with? Will they get that? Will they understand that? Will they appreciate that? So I'm always trying to be in tune with what would they like? And then what do I want to say within that?
Mm-hmm. I love that. I think what I would like right now is our next clip, because I have a clip of you and Alex together.
Loving that Alex.
I mean, who doesn't love Alex Ryback?
No, fucking taught me everything I know.
He is one of the absolute best in this art form.
He absolutely is. And he's an amazing human as well.
Talking about someone who enters the room open and with kindness and intention.
Oh, and integrity.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
When we met, we both agreed it was strictly for laughs. Freedom fully guaranteed. It was strictly for laughs. We were out for a good time. Any bar on the block. We were out for a good time. But we were in for a shock. Up until that moon above, it was strictly for laughs. Up until we fell in love, it was strictly for laughs. We had it all figured out. No feelings, no future, no fuss. It was strictly for laughs. Strictly for laughs. But it looks like the laughs on us. Strictly for laughs. We had it all figured out. No feelings, no future, no fuss. It was strictly for laughs. Strictly for laughs. But it looks like the laughs on us.
Oh, I love that clip. I haven't seen that in a long time.
Alex has that on his YouTube channel, so I love that,
You're
that
so
tune.
smart.
I don't know
So-
that tune though. Is that an Alex tune? Is that
Yeah, he wrote
I
that.
thought?
And then he wrote this other one about a guy that was with a married woman or something. And he goes, "Oh, this is one of my songs, but it's really, it's a male song." And I went, "Why can't it be from the woman's point of view?" And he goes, "Oh my God, it can be." And we did it. And he goes, "I would have never have thought that." So I just changed the
Mhm.
he, and it was good. I can't
And that's
remember.
that collaboration.
Yeah, exactly.
When you have another artist you trust, when you
That's
trust
right.
your team in a cabaret setting,
Right. And I
that's
tell
when the
my
magic can
students,
happen.
bring your brain into the room, if it's for an audition. I mean, I know I tell the story, but the way I got Guys and Dolls is I kept thinking, what song? Because they didn't want me to do the lament. They did not. And so I thought, what expresses my Adelaide? And it came to me in a dream one night, and I thought, what if I took the lyrics for Something Wonderful from King and I and did it as Miss Adelaide? And I got Scott Frankel, of War Paint and Grey Gardens.
Mm-hmm.
He was the pianist for Jerome Robbins at that time, and I said, could we do an arrangement where they wouldn't know it's like from King and I, like do our own sort of version of it? And I mean, it took their heads off, and it was definitely a risk. But I just did it so incredibly. I had such a strong point of view of that song, and it was about Nathan, my Nathan,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like loving this man, even though it was not going right. And, he will not always say what you would have him say, but now and then he'll say something wonderful. And I just kind of did the whole thing and did it like to the end, and had, the tears going, and it was definitely a risk, but it was the right one.
Well, it paid off for sure.
It did. But that's fun. That's the kind of stuff I live for. I get up every day and think things. I lay in bed at night, 3 a.m., and I'm going, oh, that would go well with that. We should look at that,
And then the new act is born in that moment.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
As you are, you keep coming back to cabaret, between Broadway, between film and TV. Do you think of it as a separate part of the business for yourself? Is it its own business side?
I think of it as just for me. I mean, whether it's me and Jason, or it's me, or me and the Pops, or again, it's a place where I can not have somebody else write the show. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I have help and collaboration, but it's not walking into something that's already been constructed. And it just feels like my own. And once you've had that, and it's your own little play, your own little skit, it's just, there's such freedom, and you can kind of take it, and somebody will say, hey, why don't you come and do 4 numbers for this gala, or we'd love to have you up at the Hotel Nico, or we'd love to have you in Provincetown at the Art House, and you just go, yeah, that'd be a fun weekend. And you again, you get to just share your feelings, you share your music, you share your stories, and sometimes, I mean, I have a wonderful medley that Alex helped me put together, and it was my idea, and then he called it Poor Unfortunate Pies. And it's starting with a monologue from The Cake, going into Mrs. Lovett, into Ursula, out with Hannigan, and at the end it said, piece of cake, pies, souls, girl. And it's so much fun, and I do get to slip into all those sort of delicious leading ladies, because as I say in the beginning, it's like sometimes people, when you get this age, they want to sort of put you out to pasture, and it's like, no, the best is yet to come. These are the roles I've been waiting for, and who knew scaring children could be so much fun.
Well, I've taught kindergarten before, so I understand. What do you think the biggest challenges facing the art form of cabaret are right now?
The venues, the lack of venues, keeping the doors open, making enough money but not charging too much. I had a thought one time, where wouldn't it be great to have, I love Rob Russell down in Palm Beach. He used to run the Royal Room, and I loved him. And I said, couldn't we have like just a U club in every, city that could hold it, and we'll just keep floating, cabaret and musical theater stars that when they're not doing something, we just have them, and basically that's kind of what it is. But at that time, they didn't have as many venues as there are now,
Mhm.
but I think it's just keeping the doors open. It's like having a jazz club. It's tough.
Well, we are sadly almost at the end of my time to ask you questions before we turn to the audience.
Okay.
I have one last question before we go to the
You
audience.
ask really good questions, Michael.
Oh, thank you, Faith. I appreciate that.
Oh, great.
Every edition of Cabaret Conversations, we're in our third year, has ended with this question. In a sentence or two or a few words, what is cabaret?
Well, I say I love the art form because it can hold a lot of different things, but basically it's storytelling for me. And what I look for when I go to see something is getting to know that performer intimately. I want to know them. I want to be drawn in. I want to be pulled in to really feeling like I know them by watching them perform. And that can be done in a numerous amount of ways. I mean, it could be an evening of, Frank Lesser. It could be the songs of Blossom Dearie, but I still want to know about you. Why did you relate to that performer? Why did you choose this performer? What is it about their music that turned you on or made you feel this? And I still have to, I mean, I had a student, Eden Castile, who has her own show, and she did a show that we named Con Artist, and it was about Madeline Kahn, and she has the chops and everything to do it. And she was obsessed with Madeline Kahn. And I mean, honestly, it was like sitting on a Bronco. My partner, Roderick Ferguson, who he and I have done a couple his pieces together. And I said, help me with this, because she's obsessed with Madeline Kahn, but I need to know her through it. And we finally got there. And it's pretty amazing. And you really get the story. But I said, sweetie, this is about you. It's not about Madeline Kahn. Otherwise, we'd just do a biography of Madeline Kahn. So I think it's getting to know the person intimately. And it's storytelling, whatever form that takes. For me, that's the difference in cabaret. It's the personalization. It's the specificity of the personality.
That's fantastic.
I hope.
It's now one of my favorite New York City nights to get to have you as part of my series here.
Well, right back at you.
Oh, thank you.
I love that New York City. Give it a big wet one for me.
I will. I will run outside of my apartment as soon as we're done. It is time to open up questions to our audience.
Wonderful.
If you would like, you can turn your camera on and give me a little wave, and I will invite you in. Or if you want to just put your question in the chat directly to me, I can ask it for you. See a couple cameras popping on. Susan, why don't I go with you first? I see you there. I'll add you in. You can unmute yourself to ask your question. Thank you for joining us tonight.
This Susan, I just wanted to say, Faith, I've seen you in so many things and enjoyed you so much. I think one was at the 92nd Street Y, where you did a one woman show about 7 years ago, and I just felt like I knew you when that was over, and there were parts that had brought tears to my eyes.
Thank you so much. Then I did my job, Susan. Thank you.
Yeah, you spoke about your husband, or you spoke about love, and I had just recently lost my life partner, so it really went right to my heart. And when you talk about the intimacy and telling stories and letting people know who you are, I have seen other cabaret performers and felt so intimately connected to them that I knew them after their performance. And I never thought about it in that way. I thought they were just enormously open and sharing of their lives. It was really beautiful.
Well, thank you. That's my favorite thing about cabaret, getting to share with people. And it just makes me feel so good that again, I always tell my students, when you're singing and being specific and doing your story, it makes people in the audience think about their own lives. It should.
Yeah, I am the New York audience.
I love that.
And when are you going to be in New York again?
Well, New York is actually not on the docket for this spring. I was just there 2 or 3 times in the fall. I was doing
Okay.
a new project with Edie Brickell and Carmen Cusack called 38 Minutes. I was doing a new it was a workshop of a new Broadway show.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was teaching at the St. Louis Cabaret festival that was held in New York. So I just was there like right before Christmas, and but I'll go back again this spring. I'm in Tulsa, Petaluma, Tulsa, Oklahoma, LA, San Francisco,
Mm-hmm.
and then I go back to Tulsa, and then I'm going to Ohio to teach at Ohio University, and I'll be teaching in LA for a month in March. So I'm kind of all over the place, but not New York this spring. But
Okay, I'll look forward to the next time in New York.
I will. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Thanks for telling me that.
Meg, let me bring you in next.
Oh, Faith Prince. Oh, you are a goddess. So here's my question. Because a lot of people are really talented at the connecting and the storytelling, but you also have an amazing command of your voice. And the first time I saw you was on Regis and Kathy Lee. And I remember looking at my clock and saying, it's okay, she woke up at what time? She did a show last night. She's doing this now, and it's not easy, but you have to do locally. So I want you to talk about the voice part, because I think that is what separates the good performers from the great performers, because they can deliver at 9 a.m., at 8:30 in the morning, at 12:30 at night. And you seem to have had a command of your voice from a very young age. And even as you speak at your age that you are now, it sounds so healthy. So I wanted you to talk about the voice.
Thank you. Well, I did go to CCM and I had good teachers there. I think that the training is very important. And then when I came to New York, I worked with a man named Harry Garland, who used to work with a lot of the singers from the Met and teach them sometimes how to belt. And my girlfriend, Roz Cairns, who's my best friend, had studied with him, and she said, "Oh, you've got to study with him. He's gonna really help you." And honestly, my voice was not very consistent at that point. And I went to him for like 4 years, like heavy duty, like once, twice a week. And he really gave me a great technique. And then I would go to him anytime I had a role and kind of work it out. Listen, I'll be 66 this year. Your voice does change, menopause, all the things that you could imagine, and I lower some of the keys, you do what you have to do. But I would say as a belter, though, I've still managed to keep,
You're always right here.
Yeah.
I feel the resonance that I want to feel myself when you
right. And I'm still supporting it. Like it's a natural, and I always tell my students, it's like, try not to think of it separately, because, you work on the technique and then you get into the role, and then, it's like, sort of like this kind of thing. And I go, no, you've got to feed the technique to get out your need. And you're using the voice, hello over there. You know, he used to always say, how are you? You know, like you were calling somebody. So it's using the technique and the intention at the same time, you know. But I do have a colorful voice. I don't really, you know, I mean, it's not the kind of voice that you would, you know, listen to just, you know, a smooth
I
night.
don't agree. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that.
I mean, it's a character voice, you know, but I certainly can color it and be sweeter in certain times. Hey Love, that is just came out for a second release. Actually, I'm pretty proud of that because it's one of the it was written by Mary, it was all the Mary Rogers music, and a lot of that was a very different thing for me, and I've colored myself depending on the roles and that kind of thing. It's been fun to play with that. But I appreciate that more than you will ever know, because I always
Can
think
I just ask one quick
actress
follow-up?
first.
Were you, because of your technique, were you kind of consistently fearless on Broadway? Because it looks like you were fearless. It looks like every time you went on that stage, you just, you knew
Well,
you knew you had the tools to connect with the audience.
well, and honestly, even like something I was listening to Jesse, help me, Modern Family, Jesse,
Tyler Ferguson.
Kelly Ferguson, who I love, he sent me, he goes, Faith, when did you do this? And it was like Men from Nick and Nora. And I had forgotten, I just forgotten like that big number, you know? And I thought, damn, all right. I was kicking it. But I remember I had a huge fight with Charles Strauss because he wanted me to end on a D. And I said, this is 8 times a week. I'm smoking a cigarette. You know, it wasn't a real cigarette, but it was still, I was taking in some kind of herbal, you know, thing. And I said, and I've got all these growls and this and that. I said, no, E flat. And I said, it's got to be, I mean, I'll go to a B, but a D is too much. It's going to stretch. And I'm not going to feel fearless and confident. And so he kept arguing with me. And I finally went to Arthur Lawrence and I went, could you back me up on this? Because I know 8 times a week I can hit that without thinking of it. And I said, I just don't want that to be an issue. And so finally Arthur just went, it's a B.
See, that's taking care of yourself. That inspires you. That's taking care of yourself.
That's right. Because I just knew and I was right. I mean, I never was out. And I just don't like to miss. I'm kind of like Elaine Stritch that way.
We love you.
Thank you, Meg. And then it looks like we've got one more video question. Hannah, I'm going to bring you in.
Okay. I grew up with you with Guys and Dolls, Off the Record, with Nathan Lane. Love you in that so much. And what was it like working with him?
Well, it was the second time we had worked together. We had done a play called Bad Habits that was oh, Bad Habits. It was working with Terrence McNally, who I love and who I credit with. I mean, he was the first person who came to me and said, you know, you're really an actress. And I was like, really? He goes, I'm going to put you in plays at Manhattan Theater Club. And I was like, okay. So I did a couple things for him, and Bad Habits was one of them. It was not, I don't know. It had its issues. It was a little dated. It was about drugs and alcohol, you know, and Nathan wasn't the happiest. And it was hard for all of us. Kate Nelligan was in it. It was just, I think the way we feel about drugs and alcohol had changed since the 70s. And this was the 90s. And this was right before Guys and Dolls. And so that wasn't the most pleasant for either of us. And it was a difficult thing. So I remember Jerry Zach saying, so tell me about Bad Habits when I went in for Guys and Dolls. And I said, well, what do you want to know? I said, it was very difficult. I said, I think the thing about the drugs and alcohol. And I said, none of us were happy. I said, are you asking me if I think Nathan Lane and I would be great together? I said, I do think we'd be great together. I said, because we're like old vaudevillians. I said, it's sort of like George and Gracie. There's just a connection there, a deep connection. And I said, given the right material, I think it would be magical. And so finally he gave me the role. But, you know, and it really, our love affair in that was amazing. And he was amazing to me during that. And really, I mean, I think he said to me in the first preview, right as the curtain was going down, he just looked at me and he went, you're marvelous in this. This is really, such a great vehicle for you. And I said, thank you so much. I said, it's such a pleasure to do this with you every night. We got on famously. So, and I think he sent me
Yeah.
flowers, and he said, here's to kicking bad habits in 91 and to a long engagement in 92. So it was amazing.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Hannah, for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank
I-
you.
I have one question that just came in in the chat, and that'll be our last question of the night. And that is from Susan. This was a marvelous program and gave me such insight into your process. I saw you about 35 times in Guys and Dolls to understand timing and comic nuance. You spoke a bit earlier about innate ability, but did you have any particular training in just understanding how to deliver a line?
Well, both of my parents were funny, and I have to say that. I wrote a piece one time called In One. And in one, if people don't know what in one is, it's the area on the stage where when the big curtain comes in, there's a small space between the edge of the stage and the curtain. And a lot of vaudeville acts were done in one because they were covering the set changes in the back. And I named it that because both my parents were sort of like vaudevillians. And so I was raised with humor, facetiousness, timing. My dad told jokes. My mother had this wild sort of cackly laugh. I think she had been in theater in college. So I was raised, and my grandparents were funny. They were storytellers. So, it was in the water where I grew up. And then I started watching a lot of cartoons, and I'd watch Lucy and Carol Burnett. And I always tell my students, Turner Classic Movies. I would watch the old movies and gather the styles. And I remember Arthur Lawrence saying to me one time, how do you know how to stand like that as, Lorraine Bixby up against the thing? And I said, oh, Turner Classic Movies. I said, it's the style, and it was very film noir. And he was just like, oh. And I said, oh yeah, I just obsessively, anytime I go into a hotel, I find the channel with the old movies, and I just put it on, and it's like an old friend. It's like my room is I'm never lonely because of that. And I think I just started pulling it apart. And then when you get into the acting classes and stuff, of course, then you zoom in too, but the timing of something, holding for something, again, the pause, as we talked about with Jerome, sometimes just waiting and holding can be hysterical. Raising the eyebrow, just letting the air hold, and you can pull the audience in. They're right with you, those kinds of things. So it was innate. And then I was around it, and then I really started to study it, and I still study it. I'm still watching, like, my mother and I have old movies all the time. My husband and I want to hear the trumpet sections. I mean, we're obsessed with it. So it's just an obsession.
I love that. What a joyous and inspiring evening this has been. A little bit of housekeeping before we say goodbye. Cabaret Conversations continues next month with Ari Axelrod as my guest.
I directed his first act.
I remember, yes.
He was my student at St. Louis.
And he's performing to a sold-out room at Birdland as we speak.
He's so talented and wonderful and such a good soul.
And someone who's pushing the art form forward in very interesting ways.
Absolutely.
So he is next month. And then in March, I will be joined by Anita Gillette. So you can sign up for both of those on 92nd Street Y's website. Faith, it has been an absolute honor to have you tonight. It has been so inspiring. And your take on using your name as a way of life and a way into the art has been such an inspiring part of this evening. Thank you for being part of Cabaret Conversations and sharing your
Jennifer Coolidge moment.
You're very welcome. And thank you for sharing your stories with us tonight. Thank you for being with us, and thank you all for joining us on Cabaret Conversations.
They're great questions. Thank you.
Have a great night, everybody.
Well.